Hey, fellow female activists. I am Cathy, your wellness coach and fellow female activist. And today we are in our wellness playlist and we are talking about movement, okay? One of those 5 pillars. And today's topic is 90% is showing up, okay? So we always start, if you're new here, with our positive quotient repetitions. Positive quotient repetitions. And it is a way to drop into our bodies to make sure that our brains and our bodies are working together. So I'm going to ask you to, whether you're sitting, standing, laying down, doesn't matter. You can close your eyes if you feel safe. What I want you to do is go ahead and take 2 fingertips and rub them with such intention, rub them together with such intention that you feel your fingertip bridges. Do you feel maybe your fingerprint? What different textures are you feeling? Now, take the 2 palms together and with that same intention, go ahead and rub your fingertips together. What has changed as you rub all the fingertips together? What sensations are you feeling? Quite literally, now you are rubbing your hands together, correct? You can take one set of fingertips and draw them down the other. What do you notice? What are the sensations? What's the texture you're feeling? Maybe it's kind of ticklish, right? Feather light tips of touch. Now go ahead and open your eyes, blink them open, and look at your hand, one of them, the palm. Have you ever noticed your beautiful hand and how it looks? The lines, if you have one, I should say. What does that look like? What do you notice that maybe you didn't notice before? You can close your eyes again if you wish. And this time, what I want you to do is simply take in a few equal breaths, preferably like a 4 count. You're going to inhale through your nose and you're going to exhale through the mouth with a sigh. You can follow me if you wish. Here we go. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth. 1, 2, 3. And go ahead and blink your eyes open if they're closed. That, again, were PQ reps. And hopefully, if you were a little rattled, okay, or a little anxious before, you're feeling a little bit less anxious now. And of course, you may not feel much of a difference if you were already at a neutral level, okay? So today's topic is about movement, okay, one of the 5 pillars. And 5 pillars being hydration, and then we have sleep, and then we have nourishment, and then we have movement, which is today, and then mental fitness. So 90% of movement, of getting into that habit of movement, is simply showing up. And you might think, okay, well, if I don't, perform any type of movement, but I just show up somewhere, that's not really producing any, results. Yes, it is, because it's happening up here. 90% of what we experience through life is because of this, and in particular, our subconscious. 97% of how we experience life is subconscious, i.e., automatic habits. Some of that is because, well, most of it is based upon survival, okay? Our subconscious is the oldest part of our brain, and for good reason, it runs a lot on automation, okay? It will literally compartmentalize as much as possible. And so what it will, sense is, okay, my human keeps performing this particular, task over and over again. I'm going to put it in automation so they don't have to use up the glucose because I want to eat 20% of that every day. 20% of all of our energy consumed, okay, in the form of food goes up here. So I say all that because 90% of any new movement practice, if you're new to movement, let's say, it's showing up. How often have you heard, oh, here's a good example, the book Atomic Habits, wonderful book. In the book, basically, the author is sharing with you how they were able to elevate their habit forming, tasks that elevated their life. Okay. One prime example is, he wanted to go to the author wanted to go to the gym. So they had triggers. The main trigger was that they would definitely lay out all their clothes where they were going to need them for the next day, so that everything was there and they had no excuse not to use the gear, right? And then get to the gym. In the book, it explains how, okay, now that you've done that, all the next step should be is, okay, now I'm going to, in this case, I believe he then just stood outside because he wanted to start walking. Okay. So it can be something like that. 90% of a habit is just showing up. It's like getting to that place where I'm like, okay, here's the trigger, and here's where I get to be, or I get to be. 90% of any type of movement practice is just showing up, meaning your intention. So as soon as you might have the trigger of the alarm clock, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think I'm going to stay in bed. And maybe I'm going to hit snooze. But instead, 90% is showing up. So you say, nope, I'm going to hit the stop, and then I'm going to stretch my body, and then I'm going to get out of bed. So guess what? That was the 90% of showing up. You chose, instead of the trigger making you go back to sleep and hitting snooze, you actually chose to stop stop the alarm and then stretch. That was the 90%. That 90% keeps moving, okay? Until you accumulate 90% of, okay, now I got dressed. I have my tenny runners, as my mom used to call them. I have my running shoes on or my walking shoes, but you haven't stepped out the door. Guess what? That's still 90% of that movement practice. Why? Because it's here. You will, so here's something to learn. Neuroscience, okay, has figured out that yes, it can take only 21 days to create a habit, to create it. But in actuality, to make that new neuron connection grow, grow, grow stronger, it doesn't keep growing until literally day 67 is when automatically now your brain's like, oh, okay, this is important. And I get to pay attention to this, and I'm going to put it on automation. Day 67 starts the actual automation part, and then it keeps going. And then at day 90, and they vary here, but basically if you can get to 90 days, now it's become almost like ingrained, and that is nice and strong, that neural connection. And then the next step is at the 180-day mark. It's part of you. It's who you are. It becomes who you are, quite literally. So if you want to become a walker, the idea is that 90% is showing up. You haven't even taken a step wherever you're at. Maybe maybe you do go to a gym, or maybe you have a baby treadmill, in your residence. Whatever the case is, not even stepping on the machine is the 90%. It is that trigger, the alarm, that tells you to get up so that you can get to the movement. So that should make you really happy. Why? Because 90% of any task lives up here. So assuming that you have all your faculties and, regardless of where you are on a able body type of situation, whatever your task is, in this case, we want it to be continuous movement, right? Habitual movement. 90% is just showing up. So by the time you actually step on the treadmill or step one foot outside because you're going to walk outside, you've already gotten through 90% of that movement habit. Now, the 10% obviously is the actual task, right? So that would be you getting on the treadmill, whether it's in your residence or at a gym or, whatnot. Same would be, okay, I'm actually stepping out and starting to walk. That is 10% of the movement practice, not 90%. The 90%, all up here. And I want to reiterate this because too many times, people are driven by dates, okay? And that's kind of white supremacy, all right? That's ingrained white supremacy. We live by goals. That's white supremacy, okay? That's patriarchy working. Please understand that your worth is not based on whether you hit a goal or not on a daily basis. Your existence is wonderful because you exist, quite literally. Movement should not be a punishment of any kind. Movement should be the most wonderful way to express your gratitude that you're still breathing. Okay. I know that it is for me. This morning I thought I was going to take part in a live online type of movement practice. And then I looked at the calendar and I realized, oh crap, I didn't make it because I didn't wake up when I was supposed to because the time had changed. And I'm like, well, okay, so what am I going to do now? Well, I could have said, well, I'm not going to move at all. But no, I'm like, no, you know what? It's still beautiful outside. Thank goodness, because I live in the desert. And I'm like, no, I'm going to take a walk. Either way, I win. So I got to go outside and take a walk when it was still lovely. Okay. 90% happened before I stepped out the door. Absolutely. So again, please understand that your movement practice is going to look different every single day. Whether that's in strenuous movement or active recovery, right? Because you can't be strenuous in a movement practice strenuously 7 days a week. That just isn't going to cut it. You get to have active recovery, meaning your body doesn't have to move at the speed of light every single day in every single movement practice. And understand that 90% of the battle is won up here. So the next time you get down on yourself because maybe you didn't get the best PR, okay? Or maybe, for whatever reason, you just didn't perform the way you wanted. Guess what? That was only 10% of the entire equation because you hit 90% already by showing up for yourself. And I want to leave you with this. What they call CTA, my call to action is that one, I am a wellness coach and I can help you. A really neat way to get into the practice of any movement, routine is to be in community. So once a month, at the end of the month, the last day of every month, I go live here on my channel, preferably live. And at 12 p.m. PT, I host a live yoga class or a clinic. Last month, unfortunately, it was TAFE, but that's how it goes. Nonetheless, when you're in community, that makes it so much easier because we use the energy, right, of the collective to be in that 90%. Okay. So your performance is only 10%. 90% of a movement practice or routine is up here. And I want you to feel good about that. I want you to feel awesome knowing that 90% is not necessarily how I perform, but it's how I'm believing that I want to be. Okay, seeing that future goal happen and the fact that I have longevity, I have, full use, hopefully, of my body in any way, shape, or form. Okay? So with that, I appreciate you and we'll see you in the next video. Take care and take charge.